Hi everybody, this is Karthika from Tab Chief. Today I am with Aman Zaidi and he is a strengths coach and he helps individuals and organizations better their performance. Aman, would you introduce yourself to our audience today, please?
Sure. Thanks, Karthika. Thanks for having me. Hey, everybody. I think Karthika has already said the most important piece. My work is centered around helping people do better at work and helping organizations do better on a variety of different, performance metrics. So I see myself as essentially a performance maximizer. And typically, the people who reach out to me for coaching or training are people who are interested in upping their performance. So yeah, that's what I do. And if you're interested in knowing any more, just put in a few comments. If you're curious about any other aspects of me, I'll be happy to answer your questions about anything that you might be interested in.
All right, Aman. So we're just going to wait for more people to join in and we're just going to casually chat until then. So tell me, how is lockdown going for you and where are you at the moment?
I'm in Pune, Kartika. I've been based in Pune now for possibly 13 years. And the lockdown is, yeah, as a consultant, the routine often involves a lot of working from home. I don't particularly have the need to get out and get to an office every day. So the concept of a daily commute and the concept of an office, that's not been part of my life for the last 10 years. So the initial few months of the lockdown were not difficult at all because I was fairly used to hanging around the house and doing my work from here. But eventually, I think once we got to the 10-week mark, once we'd gone about 2.5 months, I started missing social contact. And
Okay.
so, so I'm at a point where I would really like to be able to get out and, go for my walk or go for a yoga class or, have some friends to meet. And that's the part which is a little hard right
All right. So what is your
now.
typical day like in lockdown?
Okay. Uh, I'm a late night bird. I'm not one of those early morning larks. I'm a late night owl, and which means that on days that I do not have work, I allow myself to sleep late, and I would my typical day ends about 2 a.m. and then I would rise nice and early at about 10. So that's when there is no work, on my calendar. However, if I have virtual workshops or coaching sessions that are scheduled in my calendar, on those days, obviously, I try and force myself to get up about 8:30.
All right. So how long have you been practicing as a strengths coach and how did you get into it?
That's a good question. So this goes back actually to I think this goes back about 12 years. So 12 years ago, I was not in a facilitation and coaching kind of a role. I actually used to be in an operations role at that time. And I found, Karthika, that, I'd stopped enjoying my job. And so around that time, I was first introduced to the concept of strengths. And, I understood that apparently each person has a certain set of strengths which allow them to have impact in different roles. And that was my first introduction to that. And I think in the year 2012, about 4 years later, I went and got accredited on a strengths assessment, which actually allows people to you can take that strengths assessment. It allows you to understand what your own strengths are, and then they work with a coach like me to understand, okay, what are my strengths, what can they help me do, how can I use these strengths to maximize my impact in my career and life. So I think you can safely say for the past 8 years, I've actually been involved actively with helping people understand their strengths and coaching them on that.
All right. Okay, Aman, so I think we can start the session now. So I'm going to hand over the session to you and I'm going to sign off. So over to you, Aman.
Okay. All right, Kartika, thank you. Hey, everyone. This is, this is a one-way platform, which means you can see me and I can sense you. And so I'm aware that you're there somewhere. Well, and if you want to interact, if you want to interact with me on this, please use the comment section. If you've got any questions that you have, if you want to agree or disagree with a certain point, please feel free to use that comment section, and I'll actually keep looking at that and trying to respond to what your questions are. So once again, hello and good evening. My name, in case you missed it and you can't see it, it's Aman Zaidi, and I am a strengths coach. My passion and my profession in life is helping people discover how they can get better at whatever they do. And So today, what we're going to do is today we are actually going to focus on a couple of things, right? The title of the session is building a career around your strengths. And not everybody, what I've realized in the last many years, that not everybody has a clear idea of what strengths mean. There isn't one definition of strengths. So one of the things that I'm going to try and clarify is what a strength is. The second thing that I'm going to clarify is, okay, now that you know what your strengths are, what kind of an impact do your strengths have on your job, on your career, and even on your life? So I'm hopefully going to be able to leave you with an understanding of what's the link between strengths and work. And then of course, I'll also talk about what you can do in order to maximize your career impact. How can you use your strengths and maximize your career impact? And then we'll do a little Q&A at the end. So that's our format for today. If that right, if that works for you, we'll just crack on now. Okay, so first up, I know that you guys are here. You've taken the time out to be here, and I just want to get an idea of what are some of the reasons why you've come here. What are the things that you're curious about? So use the comment section and please type in so that I can read that and understand what would you like out of today's call. Just give me an idea. Yeah, I can see one comment that has come from Abhijit. Abhijit, hi. I'm just trying to quickly read what your question is. So you're keen on understanding what key skills people should be focusing on at this point: consulting, sales, marketing, or tech. For someone like me, it's difficult. It's a difficult choice as my job role requires a mix of everything. I think that's a good question, Abhijit. We'll come around to that. Hi, Hardik. Do you have any particular area that you're interested in? Do let me know in the comments. Vishal, thank you. Good question again. We're going to talk about that today. Why is it important to work on strengths? And this is a classic question that comes from people. Should we add more skills or should we focus more on sharpening existing ones? Brilliant question. Very important one, and we'll talk about that, Vishal, today. Thanks. Okay, great. So, thanks for the few questions that have come our way, and let's move on. And as more questions come, I'll be happy to pick them up. And and Kartika's here as well. So, in case there's a question that I miss out, she'll be nice enough to point me to it. Yeah. Okay. So, first question: what is a strength? And a lot of people tend to think that a skill and the strength are are the same things. And one of the things that I'd like to differentiate between is that, look, a skill is a skill is something that you can do. So for example, singing is a skill. uh, Learning how to code is a skill. Writing formulae in Excel, being able to use advanced Excel is a skill. All of these are skills. Being brilliant at negotiation, with suppliers is a skill. So all of these are skill. Driving is a skill. Okay, so any physical or mental or relational activity that you can learn to do better at is a skill. A strength is a little different. What a strength is something that energizes you. So let me give you an example. For example, uh, I have driving is a skill that I possess. I learned how to drive many years ago. I have been driving for quite some time. I have driven on hill routes. I can actually reverse my car without looking back. I can just use the rear view and side view mirrors to reverse. So obviously, I'm a skilled driver. But does driving energize me? The answer is no. As a result of which, what happens is that my car, it stands around most days collecting dust. And as far as possible, I avoid driving. I definitely do not go out on on long distance drives. If I have to, for example, a lot of people say we'll go to Goa, we'll drive to Bangalore, and I say no. You do the road trip. I'm going to take a train, or I'm going to fly down. I'm going to do something like that, right? I don't intrinsically enjoy driving. Because I don't enjoy it, I do less of it. Because I do less of it, uh, all the benefits that might come, from driving are not available to me. So the difference between a skill and a strength is that a strength, when you are indulging in something, it is it is energizing to you. It gives you a sense of intrinsic reward from practicing that. Right. So similarly, at work, there could be multiple strengths that people could possess, and these strengths are actually in four different areas. One area of strength is thinking. Another area of strength is execution. A third area of strength is relating, and a fourth area of strength is emotion. So each of us, potentially what could happen is we could find that we have strengths in one or more of these areas. So for example, if you look at my strengths lie primarily in the relational and the emotional quadrants, which means, so and I'll give you an example of each of these. Optimism, for example, is an emotional strength. What optimism means is that whenever I look at something, I do so with a sense of hope. So if you give me a project, I'm going to look at it with a sense of optimism, hope, positivity, and I'm going to say, okay, let's look at what this project will lead to. If there is a tricky situation, I'm always going to say in that situation, wait, maybe there's hope. We can do something with that, right? This is something that I'm wired to do. Our strengths are essentially part of our neural wiring. They are like DNA. We are hard coded to act in that way. So you can say that I'm hard coded to act in an optimistic way, and and that actually helps me tackle difficult situations. That actually helps me take on difficult projects. It helps me take on a difficult employee. It helps me it helps me get through a lot of new initiatives and difficult projects, etc. So that's one example of a strength. Similarly, creativity is one of the thinking strengths, right? Creativity is actually defined as the ability to look at things in a new way. So somebody, and I don't have creativity among my top strengths, right? So what creativity means for somebody among you, somebody might do the assessment and discover that you have creativity in your top strengths. And what that means is that you tend to you're excited by new ways of doing things. Even if there isn't a new way, you will probably go and look for a new method of approaching it. So new solutions. If there's a tricky problem, that you will be able to look at 3 or 4 different ways to solve that problem. And you're always going to be excited by coming up with new ways of doing things that have historically been done in a different way. So what that means is that you know if now, since I don't have creativity, whenever I am given a challenge, I may look at it with optimism and hope, but I may not be able to come up with multiple solutions for it. I'm just not wired to. It takes me a lot of thinking to be able to sit down. What you, with creativity as a strength, can do in 15 minutes, it will probably take me 2 days to do the same thing. So it's harder for me, and it takes longer for me, and it's not intrinsically energizing because of that, because it's so much of a struggle. It goes against my wiring. So that's what essentially strengths are. Uh, Strengths are part of your neural wiring. Strengths are things that energize you. Strengths are things that because they energize you and you do them so often, that you manage to develop a certain degree of ease in doing them. So, and again, they can be in 4 areas. Once more, I'm going to tell you what those 4 areas are. Those strengths are so you've got emotional strengths, relational strengths, you've got thinking strengths, and you've got execution strengths or doing strengths, right? Okay. Yeah, Rishi, thank you. Rishikesh, thank you very much. I see that creativity, that's one of your strengths you suspect, and that's brilliant. So what it means is that when I'm looking for new solutions, I'd love to partner with somebody like you. Yeah. Great, Mayank. I see a question. Does Strengths Finder help in maneuvering one's career in a particular direction or stream of career? Good question. Strengths Finder is one of the strengths assessments available in the world today. And whether it is Strengths Finder or Values and Action Character Strengths, or it is Strengthscope, the one that I use, or it is Marcus Buckingham Standout. A lot of these instruments, what they do is they tell you what your innate wiring is. What is it that you are wired to do? What is it that you feel energized by doing? Okay, and that question actually brings me to the next part of this session. The first one, like I said, would be trying to understand what a strength is. The second one was trying to understand what's the link between a strength and your work. So use the comment section if you want to let me know. I'm going to ask you a question, and then I'm going to wait to see if I get any responses from you. Like I said, a strength is something that energizes you. So is there a link, according to you, between doing things that energize you and your effectiveness at work? I'll repeat the question. Okay. In your opinion, is there a link between doing the things that energize you, and your effectiveness at work. So if you can leave a comment, I'll be very happy to pick that up and see what your response might be. Okay, I hear Amrita Karan. Amrita says yes, it leads to more productivity. Thanks, Amrita. Let me see what else comes up. Abhijit is saying that it seems to be directly proportional, the link between feeling energized by something and your effectiveness at work. Thanks, Abhijit. Okay. Sandhya, I see a question, and this is a question I can help you with, but if you will just hang on for a bit, I will come back to this question. Hardik, you're okay. I hear what you're saying. So essentially, what we are saying, Hardik, is that there are things that you do that you get energized by, and there are things that you do that you get de-energized by, that drain your energy. Right? For example, there are people who find working with data very de-energizing, and they can work with data for maybe 15 minutes or 20 minutes, but if they have to work with data for 4 hours, then it totally drains them. So obviously, if something is draining you, it can't be a strength, because it can't be a strength because you can't do it consistently, and it affects you negatively. It affects your state, negatively. Uh, if working with data drains you, uh, imagine if you have to work with it every day, and every day you end your day feeling drained. What's going to happen is, in a 6 month time frame, think about what's going to happen to you if you're doing an activity every day that you find de-energizing and draining. It is directly proportional. Your strengths are directly proportional to things such as motivation, and your energy and your engagement on the job, right? So with your permission, I'm going to just show you a slide now, and let's get to that. Okay, so you can see the screen. Hopefully, if you can, one or two of you, if you can just type in yes, then I'll know that the screen is visible to you. Karthika, can you, see if the screen is visible? Okay, great. Thank you so much. Okay, so here's what I'd like you to look at. Okay, so the questions are now: why should we build a career around our strengths? There's three main contributors, and that's why we need to understand this. First up, like I was telling Hardik just now, strengths are directly related to your motivation. If you are doing those things, if you're practicing the things that energize you, if, for example, if data energizes you, or creativity energizes you, or critical thinking energizes you, or relating to people energizes you, and you're allowed to do that, obviously you look forward to doing work. You can do it with a sense of energy and enthusiasm. So there's a very direct link between working in your area of strengths and your motivation. Conversely, if you're not working in your area of strengths, and you're actually working in your areas where you're de-energized, or non-strengths, what we call, then you don't look forward to it, and you can't do it with the same amount of commitment and enthusiasm that you would be able to do otherwise. So there's a very a direct link between working in your area of strengths and having positive motivation. That's one. Two, there's a concept called flow. Some of you may have come across flow. There was a researcher, a psychologist called Mihai Csikszentmihalyi, and he noticed that there are some people who lose sense of time when they're doing something. uh, if you follow sports, you may have heard people saying that this particular player is in flow today. Sachin Tendulkar or Virat Kohli is in flow, Roger Federer is in flow. He's seeing the ball very well, he's moving so well. If you're a sports person, you would probably have experienced it sometimes. And so what happens in flow is, what you're doing, it just seems, you and the activity become one. And so, for example, if you're playing tennis, you're moving so well and effortlessly, and you seem to be able to reach every ball very well. You seem to be able to, play brilliant shots that are going well, and you're not experiencing exhaustion or stress. You're in flow. And this, you may have experienced, at some point in your work as well. For example, I'll tell you, my work is working with people, is developing people and helping them. So when I'm actually in a conversation with somebody else, when I'm doing a workshop, I totally lose sense of time. Right? I am thoroughly enjoying the interaction and the ability to help somebody, that I actually get energized. I don't feel drained by it. And similarly, for some of you who are creatively inclined, or you may find that in while indulging in something creative, you totally lose sense of time, right? Whether it is writing something or it is painting something. uh, and so flow, that's the second reason. Now, how is flow related to work? uh, because it is about engagement, commitment, productivity, higher type of or level of work that you can do in flow. And that brings us to the third thing, that if you're energized by something, it follows that you will look forward to doing it. uh, it follows that you can do it without getting drained for a longer period of time. You can do it with commitment and concentration. And that means that if you're doing it with a level of enthusiasm, motivation, commitment, interest, and you want to do well in that, it follows that you're going to have a higher degree of success at it. So to answer this question, why should we build a career around our strengths? It's, there are basically two things. One is, it's good for your own emotional state. If you work in an area of your strengths, you're going to get a sense of reward from your work. And two, your chances of doing well in that is going to be higher. So if you want to feel good about your work, and if you want to give yourself a better chance to succeed at your work, then you need to understand what your strengths are, and you need to use those strengths. Right? Okay. I'm going to pause and take a quick question from Gaurav Nandgaonkar. Gaurav is actually asking a very, very important question. He's saying, okay, we've talked about strength so far. What is weakness? Is weakness a lack of skill or a lack of engagement or passion? Gaurav, and everybody, what I'm going to do is that slightly longer answer to this. So here's the thing. Who decides that something is a weakness? All right. For example, um, are you, if, for example, you don't know how to play the guitar, or if you play the guitar badly, or if you sing badly, does that mean that you're weak? Is that a weakness? Let's say, you know, let's say my Marathi isn't very good. Let's say I struggle with Marathi. Can we say that Marathi is my weakness? See, the thing is, none of us are going to be good at everything. Okay, you, Gaurav, uh, or me, or Kartika, my friend here today, we will be good at some things, but we can't be good at everything. We can't be good at English and Hindi and Marathi and French and guitar and sports and tennis and football. And we can't be good at negotiation skills, persuasion skills. We can't be good at leading. We can't be a good coach also. That kind of person just doesn't exist. So all the things that you can't do, should we label them weaknesses? And in my line of work, which is strengths coaching, or broadly what you will call strength psychology, we don't label something as a weakness. We just say, okay, Gaurav has strengths in these areas, and these areas are non-strengths, which means that Gaurav is energized by doing these things, and there's great potential in this area, because obviously he can do this in the long term. He'll be able to do this so well, as opposed to these areas where he's not naturally energized by. And remember, you could be you could have skill in this area, you could do it, just like I can drive, but you may not want to do it for long periods of time. You're okay to do it a little bit, 15 minutes you'll do it, right? You'll force yourself, you'll be able to do it for an hour, but at some point you're going to stand up and you're going to say, I don't want to do this anymore, I'd rather do something else. So all we can say is that this piece of work doesn't energize you, and therefore is a non-strength. So coming back to what is a weakness, what in our line of work, what we say is, if there is a non-strength that is holding you back, if, let's say, on the execution strengths, there is one strength that we call results focus, right? Which means not losing sight of the objective, constantly keeping the goal in mind, and working towards that. Now, if I or you are not naturally oriented towards that, uh, then if we find that that is coming in the way of our effectiveness, if it is preventing us from putting in a good performance or getting in the way of our career goals, then we can say this is a weakness, and then we need to fix it. But we do not want to lead a life trying to fix every single possible deficit. That's like saying that I want to be great at playing the guitar and the saxophone, I want to learn French as well, I want to play football, and I want to become great at tennis as well, and I want to be a great leader and a great coach, and I want to be technically sound, I want to be able to code also. So essentially you're saying, I want to spend the rest of my life fixing every deficit that I have. And that's one approach to life. And unfortunately, the education system or the academic system is a lot like that. Even the social system is a lot like that. I don't know whether um you guys can relate to this, but some people might be able to relate to this. Most people, when they are in school as kids, or even at home, uh, if you're great at a particular subject, nobody wants you to focus on that. They want you to fix that subject that you're not good at, right? The entire focus is on weakness. For example, if somebody is enthusiastic, and if a child is enthusiastic and confident and bubbly, everybody wants to teach that child, learn how to be quiet, learn how to sit down. So we're saying, so enthusiasm is actually a strength, confidence is a strength. We're saying, okay, here's somebody who has strengths in enthusiasm and confidence. We don't want you to use your strength anymore. We actually want you to stop using your strength, and the things that you can't do, such as sit down, be patient, and be quiet. We want people to do that. And which in strength psychology is the opposite way of doing things. And which is why so many people struggle in the academic system, because the academic system is saying, I am going to measure you, all you students, I'm going to measure you according to an external benchmark. I'm going to measure you against an external framework, and that framework will involve 11 subjects. So I'm going to rate you on 11 subjects, and anywhere where you're not doing well, I'm going to push you to do well in that area while ignoring what you're great at. So that's the old system. It's outdated, and it really, really, really needs to change. We need to, right from schools and colleges onwards, we need to help young people, understand what are they great at and encourage them to build in those areas. Because if you've got somebody who's confident and enthusiastic, why don't you help them build that? They can achieve great things with that confidence and enthusiasm. If somebody is great at let's say language, encourage them to do that, right? So hopefully, Gaurav, you got a perspective on why we want to move away, far away okay, all right. Sorry, I thought we'd gone off for a while. Looks like we are back. So, we want to move very, very far away from a weakness focused system, either in the home or in school or college or even at work. We will fix weaknesses if they are genuinely weaknesses, if they're getting in the way. But we're not going to lead a life trying to fix every single deficit. We're going to instead focus on what are our gifts, our talents, our strengths. And we're going to understand our strengths, and we're going to then work in those areas, so that just look at this perspective. Let me give you this important perspective. And somebody said this. There's a very famous saying by this coach, who said once that if you spend your entire life trying to fix your weaknesses, at the end of your life you're going to have very strong weaknesses. It essentially, you're saying you're weak at this, get better and become average. Instead, if somebody is already good at something, don't you want to encourage them so that they can become brilliant at this? Do you want to? So weakness focus can actually lead to a life of mediocrity. Instead, strengths focus can lead to a life of brilliance in one area. Do we want everyone to focus on their weaknesses so that everybody can become average? We actually want people to stand out, right? And therefore, that actually brings me to the next piece here. Okay, which is okay. You've understood why. You understood a couple of things by now. What are strengths? You've understood what is the link between strengths and performance at work or in life as well, and you've understood how your work gets impacted by strengths. Now, so that brings us to this next question that you may have in your head. Okay, how do I build my career around my strengths? So there's a okay, Kartika, I just want to check. You know, are we back at this moment? I thought we got disconnected for a bit. All right, are we back? All right, looks like we're back. Welcome back, everybody. Sorry about that little glitch. And what we're going to do is go back to that slide that I was showing to you very, very quickly. And this is what we were talking about. Okay. So quick recap. Essentially, we were talking about, okay, how do we build a career around our strengths? So a couple of steps in there. Step one is to identify what our strengths are. And there are multiple ways to do that, but the most reliable, statistically, the most reliable tool of doing this is to use a strengths instrument such as Strengthscope or VIA in order to understand what your strengths are. So, what you do is, if you want to understand what your strengths are, you get in touch with somebody like me, and we will set you up with a strengths assessment. And once you take the strengths assessment, you're going to get a report. And then that report is going to, list uh, essentially the things that you're most energized by, your strengths. And then you and I, we're going to have a chat about that report. And in that conversation, we're going to identify which are the things that energize you most, right? How do they help you at work? And once we've identified which strengths you possess and how they can actually be used more, then we send you on your way with the encouragement to start using these strengths more. I'm going to tell you a little story about this. Okay, so Strengthscope was co-founded by two gentlemen. One of them is called James Brooke, the other is Paul Brewerton. Now, James, he came to India, and he and I were actually talking about the instrument, and I actually asked James, I said, James, now that you know me for a bit, which strength of mine do you think is number one in your book? And he talked about a strength called relationship building. Relationship building is essentially a willingness to reach out to other people and connect with them and start building some kind of a rapport or connection with them. Essentially, some people might want to call it networking, but I think it's not just networking. It's not card exchanging. It is like the name suggests, building a relationship with new people. Does it lead to an expanded network? Yes, it does, but that's not the intention. The intention is, so the reason I do this kind of work, the reason I would like to work with people is because I'm energized by people. uh, I could have been a mathematician, I could have been an actuary, I could have been an underwriter, I could have been a coder, but those things don't energize me. What energizes me is people. So I like to reach out and connect with people. And James said that, Aman, is your strength, and I would encourage you to use that strength more and more. So he said that, and then of course he went back to the UK, and it stayed in my head, and I didn't do anything about it for some time, but it was in my head. So one day I said, okay, I'm going to start using the strength of mine consciously now, right? I'm not going to do it only as a hobby. I'm going to actually uh, make attempts to do more of it. So what I started to do was I started to connect with people on LinkedIn. Uh, if I encountered somebody's comment or profile which I found interesting, I would reach out to them and say, hey, I like what you had to say, and I'd like to connect. And then I started going out to events where like-minded people would be available, and that has actually led to miraculous things, because just reaching out to new people, building my network, what it has done is that it has actually led to new opportunities. And so, to give you a simple example, I'm on this LinkedIn Live today because I just picked up an email. I was on the Tap Chief platform, and I noticed that Tap Chief was doing some interesting things like the Solopreneur Showcase. And I reached out to Tap Chief and I said, hey, this is really interesting. I'd like to be part of this. And Kartika reached out and said, why don't we talk? So just the act of reaching out to somebody actually can lead to many things. And this is one of the things that it leads to. So that is an example of how using a strength more can actually lead to different things. And that's what happened with me when I started to use relationship building more. Right. So step one, know what your strength is or identify. Step two, start using it more. Step three is an interesting thing. Step three is you hit a new level with your strength. So basically, you start using your strength in new ways, which means that if my relationship building is currently restricted to a certain geographical area, can I take it to the next level and try build a network in another area? Can I start building uh, relationships with key people in my industry in Goa, for example? Can I do that in New Zealand, for example? That could be one example of how I start using my strength in newer ways and achieve a next level of doing that. So, uh, and what does it lead to? All of this. What it leads to, one, like I said, is it leads to new opportunities. For example, initiative is a strength. Now, if you happen to possess initiative, I would encourage you to use it more, which means you take initiative at work. You don't only take initiative in your team, but you start taking initiative outside your team as well at a project level. And don't if you're in the technical area, don't only take technical initiatives. You can start heading uh, non-technical or co-curricular initiatives, and that is going to lead to things such as greater impact in your role. It's going to lead to more visibility, and those are some of the ways in which you will expand your impact in your career, right? So that is essentially how we do this. Now, how do you build a career around your strengths? Step one, identify what your strengths are by working with a strengths coach and using a strengths assessment. Work with the strengths coach to identify which of your strengths you need to use more, right? Another factor is at play here. That one more factor is, and that's some of the questions that came earlier. And because I got disconnected, some of those questions have disappeared. But feel free to type those questions in again and I'll pick them out. I'm also going to request Kartika to see if some of those questions are available, and she could read those out to me, and I'd be happy to answer them. But essentially, your questions were, okay, I have a career, and in my career, what should I focus on? So, going back to those four strengths areas that we'd identified, those were thinking, execution, relational, and emotional. In all jobs that we do, there is a task element, there is a people element. There are times when you need to focus, and you need to think, you need to use your brain and your concentration, and you need to use your determination to forge ahead in that task. Those are strengths which we call task strengths, which are execution and thinking focused. And in all jobs, there is a people component where you need to interact with other people, either one on one or in meetings, where you want to demonstrate something to them. You need to persuade people. You need to collaborate with them, and those are your people strengths. In the emotional and relational quadrants. So it doesn't matter what role you are in. This balance of task versus people, in some roles it is greater, and in some roles it is less. For example, if you're an individual contributor in a software field, it might be that task focus, which means thinking and doing, is a little more than people focus. And let's say you are a team leader in any industry. Obviously the people component is going to be larger out there, right? So once you understand your strengths, you're going to understand, okay, are my strengths more in the thinking uh, area and in the doing area? Because if that is what you really enjoy, right, then then it may be a good idea for you to look for roles where which are very heavy on thinking and doing. So roles such as creating something, a product or coding, or or actuarial science, or Six Sigma. All of those are great roles because you have to look at data, you have to think, you have to find solutions, you have to do stuff within certain timelines, and all of that is going to energize you. And one of the mistakes I've seen people make is, in order to get promoted, in order to make them more money, they start taking on people manager roles when essentially they are not energized by interacting with people. And then that becomes difficult for them. And the converse is also true. If you're really, really interested in people, then you should look at running a team. You should look at training or teaching, so that you have the opportunity to interact with and help people, rather than trying to take up a role where a large part of your time will actually be spent on chasing deadlines and tasks. So that's the other part. Once you identify what your strengths are, it's a good idea to figure out what does your current role, what's the balance of task versus people in your current role, and which of your strengths tie into that role and which don't. And that's one way to plan your career. Of course, you're going to need a coach to do this, because it's not done in one session. You actually sit with the coach in multiple sessions, and over a period of time you actually arrive at clarity around which kind of a role or which kind of a career might be good for you. But you need to work with a coach around that. So that's one answer to that. Kartika, thank you for sending these questions to me. I'm just going to look at some of these. One question, and I don't know the name of this person who had asked. I'm going to read it out. If you have many strengths, how do you go about deciding which one to focus on and build your career on? How do you create a balance between what you're good at and what you're passionate about? I think I answered part of this question. I think the balance thing is a very good one. Balance is important. I think a 60-40 balance is really important. 60% of your time, at least bare minimum, needs to be spent on stuff that is energizing to you, right? Because look at it this way: there are tasks that energize you, there are tasks that de-energize you. Now, if at the end of your work day, and therefore at the end of your work year, you want to end up feeling energized by the work you've done, then this balance needs to be that the tasks that energize you need to be at least 60%, and the tasks that de-energize you need to be at 40%, so that you still have a 20% energy surplus in you. If this goes the other way, which means 40% of your tasks energize you and 60% drain you, you're going to end every day with an energy deficit. And you're going to start saying, look, I don't enjoy my job. So that balance is a good question to ask, and thank you for asking that. Great. So on that note, I'd like to take any other questions that you might have. And if you do have any questions, please type them in. I'd be very, very happy to answer any before we close for today. All right, so it appears that the questions related to strengths have been answered. Akshay has one last one. So strengths like honesty, perspective can be effective in which career roles? Akshay, good question. Honesty and perspective, you're talking about it from the VIA, VIA report, probably. And you see, uh, if your role requires that you need to have a certain degree of in-depth perspective, you need to be able to connect the dots and have 40,000 square feet view, sorry, 40,000 feet view, then definitely I think those are the areas, those are the kind of roles where perspective will come into play. Honesty, I think, is an important strength to have in whatever we do. I think that goes without saying. And of course, how much you're using your honesty is also an important one. There is something such as being too honest, especially in interpersonal interactions. So we need to, use our strengths judiciously. That's also an important thing. But here's the thing: reach out to me. Our time for now is going to end in 2 minutes. Reach out to me in case you want to get some of these questions answered, and I'd be happy to schedule a session and we can talk this through. So here is an email address that you can write into. It is aman@fortiers.work. Feel free to sorry, I don't know if you can see that. Yeah, there you go. We can see this now. So feel free to write in here. And if you're curious about what your strengths are, if you're curious about how can you use your strengths to have more impact in your career, or how do you use your strengths to build a career, how do you plan your career around your strengths, all of these questions I'd be very happy to engage with. So just write in and we'll schedule something. And on that note, we can end. And feel free to reach out and connect on LinkedIn or email, and I'd be very glad to continue this conversation. Karthika, you want to take over? Any comments? All right, it looks like we're done. So thank you very much, people, and have a very good night. Bye-bye.